Picks. This is Gerard, and today we're going to be doing my early picks and predictions for UFC 328. Now we're going to be doing the main card, and we'll start from the beginning of the main card to the main event of the main card. So this is UFC 328, Chimaev versus Strickland, and I'm really excited for this card because I'm actually going to be there at the Prudential Center to watch this live. So this is going to be my first time seeing Chimaev in person live. And of course, who better than our boy Joshua Van? So we might have a little bias here, but I love Taira too. Taira is nice, but let's get into this breakdown, starting with the beginning of the main card, King Green versus Jeremy Stephens. Now, in this fight, King Green, he's coming off of a really good win against Daniel Zellhuber. He finished that fight in a knockout. And Jeremy Stephens, his last fight, he lost a unanimous decision to the dog Mason Jones. Now, this fight, early thoughts, I'm just going to be basing this off their last fight. And I think King Green, he's going to be the more competitive fighter in the UFC. Jeremy Stephens, I don't know. He has a lot of L's as of late, and he's back in the UFC. I just don't know if he still can compete really at this level. They're both 39, but it kind of feels like Jeremy Stephens is the older guy in this one. And King Green, I think he is going to be the faster fighter in this. I think he's still quick, even at 39, able to finish a guy like the younger Daniel Zellhuber, who had the reach on him. So really, I think I'm going to be all King Green. The one caveat is Jeremy Stephens, he still has that power. So if we've seen King Green go to sleep before, and at 39, almost 40, both these guys are almost 40, his chin's not the same. So if he can stay away from Jeremy Stephens and those big shots, I think King Green can get this one done. So in terms of decision or finish, I think this is most likely going to be a decision win for King Green. I don't know if he can put away Jeremy Stephens, even though Jeremy Stephens is 40. I think Jeremy Stephens is still a tough guy and he can weather the storm. King Green doesn't have the craziest power, but I think he can win on points with the volume and get that decision win. So that's going to be my pick there for the main card opener for UFC 328. Now moving on to Sean Brady versus Joaquin Buckley, New Mansa. Now, they're both coming off a loss, and this big loss for Sean Brady against Michael Morales is a bit of a contender fight for the title, even though I think it's Ian Gary who's going to be fighting for the title next against Islam. Now, dude, Michael Morales is just a big guy, and Sean Brady wasn't able to get in close to get his wrestling going. Michael Morales, obviously, he has the judo in his back pocket, but the main thing here was Sean Brady just couldn't get past the big power and the reach of Michael Morales, really. I think Michael Morales is just so big and so powerful that Sean Brady couldn't take the shots that was coming to him to the face. Brady didn't have enough head movement in that one. He couldn't really get his wrestling going. Now, as for Joaquin Buckley, he was also on a bit of a win streak up until his last fight 10 months ago against Kamaru Usman. And we really saw that big hole in his game, which is that wrestling, which is Sean Brady's bread and butter. And I think Sean Brady may be able to do something similar that Usman did if Joaquin Buckley hasn't improved the grappling. The question is if Sean Brady can get past Joaquin Buckley's very dangerous, destructive strikes that may come his way. And for me, I just think Michael Morales had something different that he was on in that fight 5 months ago against Sean Brady. Joaquin Buckley can do something similar, but in this one, with the big hole in the grappling, I think Sean Brady is going to play much smarter in this fight. And seeing what he saw from that Kamaru Usman fight, I think Sean Brady is really going to put that game plan in, get that grappling, and get Joaquin Buckley on the ground. And I think, yeah, I'm just going to have to side with the grappler. Joaquin Buckley, he's dangerous at all times, but I just think Michael Morales was a bit of a weight bully against Sean Brady. I don't know if Joaquin Buckley will look like that against Sean Brady. So, I mean, Joaquin Buckley, so welterweight. Yeah, I think early thoughts here, I'll predict Sean Brady via decision. I don't know if Sean Brady will be able to get a submission on Joaquin Buckley. Well, I mean, he did have a submission on Leon Edwards, but I'm leaning a decision win by Sean Brady. And yeah, that's what I'm going to go with on the second fight, the main card. Now, the third fight on the main card, we got Alexander Volkov versus Waldo Cortes-Acosta, Salsa Boy. Now, they're both coming off a win. Waldo knocked out Derek Lewis in his last fight, ground and pound. That was less than 3 months ago. That was 2 months and 4 weeks ago. And Jailton Almeida, who is now out of the UFC, which Volkov beat in a split decision, which he was able to win, I think, one of those rounds from being on his back, doing more damage at one point, I think. So Almeida was looking very desperate at the takedowns there and wasn't able to get too much damage. And Volkov was able to get his strikes in, even though he was getting grappled a lot of the fight. So this fight, Waldo and Volkov is going to look, I think, more so in the stand-up and striking. Now, this is a heavyweight fight. Volkov is 37 years of age. Costa is 34 years of age. Now, in heavyweight fights, you could get away with being the older fighter. Still look good, even at 37, 38. So, although Volkov has seen a lot more fights experience, I think Waldo will be a bit more crispier in the stand-up in terms of the boxing. Volkov throw in some of that kickboxing, his range from kicks, and he has a 2-inch advantage in his reach. But I think I'm going to ride with the Salsa Boy. And I do believe he's the underdog in this fight. And even though they do have a common opponent, Volkov, who he was able to beat Sergey Pavlovich in a unanimous decision, it's been known that they've been training partners in the past. So Volkov had a little bit of a head start in facing Sergey Pavlovich. Waldo Cortes, on the other hand, that was his first time facing Pavlovich. I don't believe that they were sparring partners in their careers. And he was looking good. He was taking shots well, and he was able to compete with Sergey Pavlovich in that fight. And then after that fight, he's been on a 3-fight winning streak, all finishes, knockout, knockout, knockout. So he's able to knock out Delia, Gaziev, and Derek Lewis. He's able to finish fights lately. And as for Volkov, aside from his Pavlovich unanimous decision win, I do think he's looking, his last 2 wins, or his last win was a split decision. He could have lost that fight, and he lost the split to Cyril Gane. Now, he could easily be on a 2-loss skid for Volkov. And I think I'm going with the momentum, the 3-fight finish streak by Waldo Cortes-Acosta, who I like his finishes. Shamil Gaziev and Derek Lewis, it's pretty impressive. And he was able to come back in that first round against Delia after being eye-poked. It's pretty impressive. So I'm going to go with the guy who's been able to finish fights instead of going to split decisions that Volkov's been getting in. So that's going to be my pick, Waldo Cortes-Acosta, as my first underdog, I believe, on this main card. Now coming on the fourth fight, the co-main event, the one that I'm most excited for, this Joshua Van versus Taira. Now, Joshua Van is the champion. Obviously, he won the belt by a freak injury that happened to Pantoja. And Tatsuro Taira, the grappler, versus Joshua Van, the volume striker. Now, you could say this could look like that Max Holloway versus Charles Oliveira, being Joshua Van is the more of the Max Holloway. Joshua Van is the more volume striker type of style, like a Max Holloway. And Tatsuro Taira is that nasty pedigree of a grappling and submission artist. There is another way you can look at this. One fight that comes to mind is this was in bantamweight at UFC Seattle. We saw Ricky Simone, the grappler, facing Yanez, the striker. Nice crisp boxing. And we saw Ricky Simone being able to get round one we were able to see Ricky Simone take down Yanez in round one and able to get that first round. And then the second and third round, we started to see some more stand-up and better striking, with Yanez being able to stop or slow down those takedowns down the stretch. Towards the end, we started to see Yanez put on the volume, put on the strikes, and was damn near almost able to finish Ricky Simone, which was on the brink of getting knocked out and was saved by the bell. Now, we saw Joshua Van, that's his style. He likes to pour it on you down the stretch with the volume and pace and pressure. And we saw what he could do towards the end of the fight. He knocked down Brandon Royval in the last seconds of that fight, which was an all-out war, which was one of the most exciting fights that I've seen in the UFC. Joshua Van being one of the most exciting fighters right now in the UFC. And I believe he's the second youngest to win a UFC championship belt, even though that belt was won via injury. That's still impressive to be reaching a title shot at 20. So 24 years old. He got the title shot at 24 years old, won it via injury by Pantoja. So I think Joshua Van is 9-1 or something in his, he's 9-1. His first fight, Zamugalo. So that's 1, 2, 3, Charles Johnson, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So 9-1 since he's been in the UFC. Now, he's been very active, and by being very active, he's able to get a title shot at 24. So to me, that's very impressive. Now let's look at Tatsuro Taira. He's got a lot of wins too since 2022. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So he's 8-1. 8-1, lost to Brandon Royval via split. That was his first 5-round fight to go all 5 rounds against Brandon Royval. Common opponent, Joshua Van, also faced Brandon Royval, and he was able to get that unanimous decision win. That was 9 months ago against Brandon Royval. Tatsuro Taira faced Brandon Royval a year and 6 months ago. That was back when I believe Royval was on a winning streak. So let's see. Okay, Royval competed for the title against Pantoja, won 2 split decisions against Brandon Moreno, and yeah, we saw from that Taira fight, as the fight went on, man, Taira was getting pieced up by Royval when he wasn't able to get the grappling going, and Royval was starting to get those stops in the grappling. It wasn't looking that good. Taira wasn't looking great in those striking exchanges. And for Van, that is a big hole where if he doesn't have his head movement, Joshua Van is doing his reads throughout the fight, he's going to counter and put it on you. So in terms of the boxing and stand-up, Van is a very big advantage, along with the output. Do you see these guys' output? If you look at the significant strikes, oh my goodness. In 10 fights, Van has been able to continue to land damn near 9 strikes per minute. Since he's been in the UFC, that's 10 fights, almost 9 strikes per minute. That's crazy. And he's been able to defend 57% of the strikes. As for Taira, got almost 3 strikes per minute landed. Obviously, that's lower because he's working in that grappling. And in terms of his defense, he's only been able to defend 47% of the strikes. So we look at the grappling, we see almost one takedown per 15 minutes for Van. That's not his game plan going into fights. Really, he's not trying to take you down. But if it presents himself, he finds a opportunistic situation where he can easily take you down, he'll take you down and work that ground and pound. Now, as for the technical grappler who has nasty back takes and all of that, will this look like a Charles Oliveira versus Max Holloway? I mean, Taira does have that almost three takedowns for 15 minutes. So that's like a takedown a round. His takedown accuracy is 46%. I mean, Joshua Van, he's got 63% takedown accuracy. I'm just kidding. Those are mainly opportunistic, easy takedowns. If he finds in the fight, he'll go for it. But the takedown defense, if we saw from that Raid Suraya fight that Joshua Van had against the grappler who did land that clean arm throw, he threw Joshua Van over his shoulder. That was a nasty takedown there by Raid Suraya. And that fight, Joshua Van, we saw that he's able to get up fairly quickly from getting taken down, and he was able to stuff a lot of the takedowns in that fight. I think he was able to stuff maybe at one point in the fight, he was able to stuff 10 of 13 of Raid Suraya's fight. In that 3-round fight, he was able to stop 10 of 13 against that guy at one point. Now, when I saw that, we see that Joshua Van is really improving his grappling, his takedown defense, and I think they've been really working on that over the years, and especially in preparing for Tatsuro Taira. Now, this was postponed, so we don't know what injury Joshua Van had. It was labeled as a minor injury, so I'm not going to look too much into that, but coming into this one, I'm just going to make it as a little bit more time to get your grappling ready, your takedown defense ready against Tatsuro Taira. And as for Tatsuro Taira, we could assume that maybe he's getting, from that extra time, some of that striking, improving that striking and that striking defense ready against the volume that Joshua Van is going to be pouring onto him. I mean, damn near 9 strikes per minute with a 47% significant strike defense. That's going to be tough. That's going to be tough getting all those shots getting at you. So obviously, I got to side with the champ right now, the underdog in this fight against Tatsuro Taira, mainly, even though this is obviously a biased pick. I mean, I picked, this is coming from the guy who picked Max Holloway against a 50-45 Oliveira. I'm going with the striker on this one, the champ, Joshua Van. And I do believe he'll be able to defend the takedowns. I do think Taira will get some takedowns in, maybe 2 or 3, but I think a few of them will see that Joshua Van will be able to get up, or one of them, Taira may be able to hold Joshua Van down for one round, something like we saw from the Ricky Simón versus Yanez fight. In the early rounds, Simón was able to hold Yanez down, but as the fight went on, the takedowns started to get harder. Both fighters got more slipperier, and I think as the fight goes on, Joshua Van's going to be able to pour it on Taira, as we've seen from the striking exchanges that we've seen in his fight against Brandon Royval. He didn't always have that head movement, and he was getting pieced up against Brandon Royval. Now, if you're facing Joshua Van, there's going to be even more volume and strikes landed as the fight goes on if you're not able to finish Joshua Van via submission, which is Taira's most likely game plan, to finish Joshua Van via rear naked choke or something like that. So I think I wouldn't, in a betting perspective, Tatsuro Taira at, I don't know, minus 180 or something like that. I wouldn't. I don't like those odds personally. Let's see here. Is it right here? Okay, so minus 180. I think you got to go with the champ at plus 150, or I think at some places, I think it's, last time I checked, it was plus 170 on Bet Online. So in a betting perspective, plus 170, the value's there. And you have a guy who's going to be fighting for your money every minute, every second of the fight, and he's landing damn near almost 9 strikes per minute over the course of his UFC career. Give me that all day at plus 150, plus 170. It could go higher. So yeah, that's how I see this fight. Joshua Van being able to pour it on Tatsuro Taira as the fight goes on, as it gets harder to grapple, as it gets harder to take down Joshua Van throughout the course of the fight. I don't think this will look like Max Holloway versus Charles Oliveira. I think this could more look like a Ricky Simon versus Yanez. And Ricky Simon was almost finished via strikes in that fight. I think Joshua Van can get a late round TKO or a decision win if it goes all 5 rounds. So that's how I see this fight. Now for the main event of the evening, we got Khamzat Chimaev versus Sean Strickland. Now, this is obviously, they got Khamzat Chimaev minus 550, plus 400 for Sean Strickland. Now, Strickland might have a better game plan for the grappling than Dricus du Plessis had, being these two guys have sparred before in the past, Chimaev and Strickland, so Strickland has a better idea of what it's like to be in there with Chimaev and the grappling. But I do believe he said that somewhere down the lines, someone said that Chimaev got the better of Strickland in the grappling. So Strickland does have the experience of seeing what it's like to be in there in terms of the grappling. And I do believe that Chimaev's striking is better than it was before. I think Chimaev's striking is better than it was against that Burns fight, the Gilbert Burns fight. And I do think he's finding his takedowns better takedown. Yeah, Chimaev's takedowns is crazy. Yeah, it makes sense why they're saying minus 550 or Chimaev, which is probably might be more on some bookies. But if Sean Strickland can stop the takedowns, okay, Sean Strickland's not going to be able to stop the takedowns. Sean Strickland's not going to even his takedown defense, 76%, takedown accuracy for Chimaev's 55%. I think eventually at some point in every round, Chimaev's going to find at least one takedown in every round if it goes all 5 rounds. And I think for a majority of those times that he gets them down, I think he will be able to hold Strickland for 3 or 4 of those takedowns out of 5. So, I mean, Strickland does have wrestling, but Chimaev's grappling is just different. And Sean Strickland doesn't have the most powerful strikes either. So Sean Strickland did finish Fluffy via knee to the body, but we've always known Fluffy has been fluffy in the body, Anthony Hernandez. This was 2 months ago. That Dricus du Plessis decision win was 8 months ago, so you can only imagine how much better Khamzat can look 8 months from that fight. And obviously, Sean Strickland was probably prepping for Anthony Hernandez's grappling as well. And we saw Sean Strickland look good with defending the takedowns of Anthony Hernandez. Anthony Hernandez wasn't able to really get Sean Strickland down, get any grappling going. And it was mostly a stand-up striking match in that fight. And as we saw, Hernandez got a little bit reckless and was really trying to force his strikes on Strickland up until the point where he got knee to the body. He wasn't defending the knee and was finished by Sean Strickland. This is just early thoughts, predictions. Obviously, I'm going to be on the Chimaev side. I just think he's going to be able to get the takedowns going. And if he gets 5 takedowns throughout the fight, I think he's holding Sean Strickland down. At least 3 to 4 of those takedowns, I think Chimaev will be able to hold him down, land some ground and pound, maybe look for a submission. But yeah, that's going to be you know what? I'm going to say Chimaev's going to find the finish, whether it's ground and pound or submission. I think he'll find a submission at some point. I mean, he looked spectacular 8 months ago. well, how much better can Chimaev look as a champ with eight months time to prepare and get better versus the 2 months that Sean Strickland has had from his last fight? I mean, Sean Strickland, he stays at the gym, so he's always training, but I just think Chimaev is that much different, that much big of an impact on the ground that Sean Strickland can't fully prepare for. So that's going to be my early thoughts and prediction for Chimaev versus Strickland. And that about does it for UFC 328. My early thoughts and prediction for this UFC main card. And yeah, I'm excited to go to this fight in person, see this live in Newark, New Jersey, the Prudential Center, and hopefully Joshua Van gets it done versus the biggest test of his career, defending his belt. So let's get it. This is Gerard, and I'm out.